Serenity Valley Stories invites you into the shadows. Like and subscribe for more tales that will haunt your nights. And now our feature presentation, The Ravaging Night. I always thought of Brenton Hollow as the kind of place where nothing ever really happened. The streets were quiet, the houses old but well kept, and the people. Well, we were all pretty much the same as we'd been since childhood. That's the thing about a small town, you grow up knowing everyone, and everyone knows you. By the time you hit your mid-30s like I had, the town becomes less of a curiosity and more like a faded photograph. Familiar, comfortable, but still, stagnant. It was late September when everything changed. The crisp autumn air had started to settle in, the leaves turning shades of red and gold, and the nights grew colder, sharper. I remember sitting on my porch that night, wrapped in an old flannel, watching the breeze push the leaves down the empty street. It was just another evening in Brenton Hollow. Or so I thought. The first sign that something was wrong came with a sound. It was distant at first, something like a howl, but deeper, more guttural. I paused, squinting into the growing darkness. Brenton Hollow didn't have wolves, or at least, not that I'd ever seen. But there it was again, louder this time, echoing off the old brick buildings that lined Main Street. A chill crept up my spine, the kind that's more instinct than anything else. I stood, my eyes scanning the street for any movement. There was none, just the shadows stretching long under the street lamps. My house sat at the edge of town, close enough to the woods that critters sometimes wandered in, but this was different. This wasn't a stray animal or some late-night wanderer. It was something more primal, something wrong. I went inside, locking the door behind me, a habit more than a necessity in Brenton Hollow. My house was old, a two-story place I'd inherited from my parents, but it had character. The creaks in the floorboards were familiar, comforting even. But that night, the house felt different, like the walls were pressing in, holding their breath. I tried to settle into the couch, flipping on the TV for some background noise, but my mind kept going back to that sound. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there, lurking just beyond the glow of the street lamps. I wasn't wrong. A crash shattered the quiet, followed by the unmistakable sound of glass breaking. I jumped to my feet, heart racing as I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a fireplace poker. The noise had come from the back of the house, near the kitchen. My mind raced with possibilities, an animal, a burglar, but deep down, I knew it was something worse. The kitchen was dark, save for the faint glow of the moon through the window. My breath caught as I stepped in, my eyes immediately locking on the shattered glass scattered across the floor. The back door's window had been smashed in, shards of glass littering the ground like jagged teeth. I felt the cool breeze seeping in, but it was what was outside that sent a wave of cold terror through me. A pair of glowing yellow eyes stared back at me from the darkness, just beyond the doorframe. I froze, the poker gripped tight in my hand as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. It was massive, hulking in the shadows, its body hunched and covered in thick, matted fur. The smell hit me next, a rancid mix of earth and blood, sharp and overwhelming. My stomach churned as the creature's lips pulled back in a snarl, revealing sharp, jagged teeth that glinted in the moonlight. A werewolf. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. I'd heard the stories growing up, the old legends about beasts in the woods, but I never believed them. No one did. But here it was, standing just outside my broken door, staring at me with a hunger that chilled me to the bone. I took a step back, my mind screaming at me to run, but before I could move, the beast lunged. The door exploded inward, splinters of wood flying as the werewolf crashed through. I barely had time to react, throwing myself to the side as it slammed into the kitchen table, sending it crashing to the ground. The poker was useless in my hands, nothing but a flimsy piece of metal against the force of nature that was tearing through my home. I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding as I bolted for the front door. The house seemed to close in around me, the familiar walls now a maze of shadows and danger. I could hear the werewolf behind me, its heavy breathing, its claws scraping against the floor as it gave chase. I reached the door just as the beast crashed into me, its massive weight knocking me to the ground. Pain shot through my side as I hit the floor, my breath knocked out of me. I could feel its hot breath on my neck, the stench of blood and decay making my head spin. In a panic, I grabbed the closest thing I could reach, a broken piece of wood from the shattered door, and swung it wildly. It connected with the werewolf's snout, and it yelped, pulling back just enough for me to scramble to my feet. Blood trickled down my arm, warm and sticky, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I threw myself out the door, stumbling into the street as the werewolf let out a deafening roar. My legs burned as I ran, my mind focused only on getting away. But the town wasn't safe. The werewolf wasn't just after me, it was tearing through Brenton Hollow, hunting, destroying. I could hear the sounds of chaos around me, screams, crashes, the distant howl of the beast as it moved through the streets. I wasn't the only one. Houses were being torn apart, cars flipped, doors shattered. The quiet little town I'd grown up in was being ripped to pieces, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I ducked into an alley, my chest heaving as I pressed myself against the cold brick wall. My body screamed in pain, my arm throbbing from the cut, but I forced myself to stay alert. The werewolf was still out there, hunting, but it hadn't found me yet. I peeked around the corner, my heart sinking at the sight of the destruction. The streetlights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the rubble. Houses I'd known my whole life were now nothing more than broken walls and debris. And then, in the distance, I saw it, the werewolf, standing in the middle of the street, its massive form silhouetted by the flickering lights. It sniffed the air, its glowing eyes scanning the wreckage. For a moment, it was still, almost calm. Then, without warning, it let out a howl that shook me to my core. The sound was deafening, filled with rage and hunger, and it echoed through the empty streets like a death knell. I knew I couldn't stay hidden forever. The werewolf would find me eventually. I had to get out of town, had to find help. But Brenton Hollow was isolated, surrounded by miles of woods and farmland. Even if I made it to the edge of town, there was no guarantee I'd survive the night. But I had to try. I pushed myself off the wall, wincing as pain shot through my arm. The werewolf was moving again, sniffing the air, its eyes locked on something in the distance. Now was my chance. I darted across the street, keeping low, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. I made it to the edge of the woods just as the werewolf let out another howl, this one closer. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just kept running, the branches whipping against my face, the cold night air burning my lungs. The woods were thick, the trees casting long shadows that seemed to swallow me whole. My legs felt like lead, my body screaming for rest, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Not with that thing chasing me. I stumbled over a root, falling hard to the ground. Pain shot through my side as I hit the dirt, the wind knocked out of me. I struggled to get up, but my body refused to cooperate. My vision blurred, the world spinning around me as I gasped for breath. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the night fell silent. I lay there, frozen, listening. The werewolf's howls had stopped. The screams had faded. The only sound was the rustle of the wind through the trees. Was it gone? I forced myself to sit up, my whole body trembling as I looked around. There was no sign of the werewolf, no glowing eyes or heavy footsteps. Just the quiet of the woods and the distant glow of the town behind me. I don't know how long I sat there, too scared to move, too exhausted to think. But eventually, the adrenaline faded, replaced by a deep, aching pain. My arm was bleeding badly, my side bruised and swollen, but I was alive. The town wasn't so lucky. When I finally made my way back, Brenton Hollow was unrecognizable. The werewolf had torn through it like a hurricane, leaving destruction in its wake. Houses were reduced to rubble, cars overturned, streets littered with debris. But the werewolf was gone. No one knew where it had come from or why it had attacked. There were no explanations, no answers. Just fear. And the knowledge that somewhere, out there in the darkness, the beast still lurked, waiting to strike again. Thank you for watching Serenity Valley Stories. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another scary tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below.